I'm going to talk about some of our experiences at NYU of analyzing user-generated content on the internet and some of the lessons that we have learned that data is often not sufficient. You also need to put the appropriate analysis on top of this data. Let me start with a simple example. Okay, so let's say that you are shopping for a camera. You go to buy a Canon EOS 7D, and you go online, for example, on Amazon, and you find two merchants that they are selling the same camera. One is 17th Street Photo, which is selling it for $1,859, and the other is Willoughby's, who is selling it for almost $2,000. So people look at that and they are saying, well, a rational consumer is going to buy the cheapest. Well, by monitoring the market for quite a few months, we have seen that this is actually not the case. Quite often, we realize that people don't buy the cheapest. For example, we have seen a transaction yesterday that someone bought from Willoughby's this camera instead of buying from the cheaper alternative, which is 17th Street Photo. So we're looking at that and we're saying, well, interestingly enough, Willoughby's selling exactly the same product. A Canon EOS 7D, new packaging and so on, both are shipping from New York, same taxes, same shipping. They are willing to pay 7.5% higher in order to get this product, which is approximately $140 more. So we're looking at that and say, well, why does this thing happen? I mean, why does anyone buy a product for a higher price than the one that's available? Well, maybe it was a blip, but by observing the market on Amazon.com for approximately 15 months for a few products, we have seen that quite often, actually, people are willing to pay more in order to get a product. So here is a chart that shows the price premiums that people pay. So the horizontal axis shows the price premium. Everything that is above 0% means that someone paid, for example, 30% more compared to the competition, to the available competition, in order to buy the product. And we have observed approximately 6,000 such transactions. So looking at that, people are saying, well, why does this thing happen? Are buyers irrational? Why do they want to pay more compared to the others? But honestly, even the other side of the chart also is strange. Why would anyone, as a seller, charge so much less compared to the competition in order to sell a product? Why should I discount my product for 20 or 30% compared to the competitors in order to make a sale? In principle, everything should have been very close to 0%. Everyone should have had approximately the same price. So why does this thing happen? Well, the answer is very, very simple. A little bit more difficult than I thought. Well, why does this thing happen? It happens because people care about the reputation of the seller. You might have went online to buy something. You see the same camera available from multiple merchants. You see, for example, B&H selling a camera, and you see shady guy in Brooklyn.com selling the same camera for $200 less. Well, would anyone buy from the small merchant? No. Actually, they are willing to pay more to buy from a reputable merchant, and this means that the reputation has a price. This comparison allows us to figure out that what is the value of reputation online. So, for example, for this particular transaction that we have, we see that Willoughby's has a price of reputation which is worth $140, or approximately 7.5%. And you have now a quantitative measure of something that we use to interpret in a very, qualitative fashion. It has a good reputation, bad reputation, and so on. Now, once we start having that, we're thinking, well, OK, now we can measure reputation. But what is reputation? Well, if you go online, the reputation of a seller in the Amazon marketplace is something like that. So you have the past transactions of the seller, the stars that they had, and actually all these things people have seen that they matter. An extra star gives you some extra pricing power so that you can charge more compared to the competition and still make a sale. The history that you have, the number of transactions, also matter. The longer the history, the better you are. But we said, OK, reputation is not something monolithic. It's not something that can be counted. It has good reputation or bad reputation. People actually have reputation across multiple dimensions. Some of them, they are very good at handling refunds. Some of them are very good at shipping very quickly. Some of them, they have a reputation of having good prices. How do we figure out? Well, we go and we see the text. So, for example, for this particular seller, we have like good or very fast shipping, perfect packaging, no complaints. Or we have, for example, here, arrived much sooner than expected, blah, 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 blah. Or this is the worst. I have been waiting for 3 items for this item. This is the worst internet experience I have ever had. I will never order from this merchant again. So people use text to express their opinions and to rate the seller across multiple dimensions. How good they are in shipping, how good they are in packaging, how good they are in handling complaints, and so on. And actually what we observe is that there is a lot of text. People write comments about the seller, and typically most of the sellers on Amazon, they have hundreds or thousands or even tens of thousands of such feedback. And what we did, actually, we said, OK, let's try to analyze this text to figure out how this text affects the reputation of the seller. So once someone writes, excellent seller, what does this mean? And we came up with some results that are looking like that. So for example, wonderful experience. It increases the pricing power of the seller by $5.86. Outstanding seller increases by $5.76. Perfectly packaged, $3.74, and so on. Plus, we have also negative comments like never received. It drops the power of the seller by $7. Defective product, $6, minus $6.82. Or we have other things as well. For example, if you check here, we have horrible experience, and actually there is a misspelling. Never received. Actually, this is very, very common online. I guess people are very, very angry when they don't get the package and they cannot even spell it correctly compared with here. I'm leading somewhere. I'm going to come back to this point later on in the presentation. But you can see, actually, this way of analyzing the data, right? Forget about sentiment. We don't care about sentiment at this point. So we have a very hard measure to examine what this feedback means. So even if we have misspellings, we can understand what this misspelling means, how it is being interpreted by the customers. We have a quantitative measurement. Actually, let me look at the following example as well. Good packaging. What do you think? Positive or negative? Well, most people, they look at that and they say it's positive. Actually, it's negative. It drops the pricing power of the merchant by a little bit, admittedly, minus 0.56%, but it is negative. Why is that? So it's almost when you write a recommendation letter for a student, and you need to write something for the student, and you are writing something like, he's a good student. He works hard. People read this recommendation letter and they say, well, that's the best that you can say about the student. Okay, forget about this guy, reject. So same thing online. People look at this feedback, good packaging. Really, if you look at the comments that people leave online, there's something like excellent seller, super fast shipping, tremendous packaging. People in this online environment, they tend to exaggerate a lot. So naturally, consumers, when they look at this one, they tend to discount what people are writing. So good packaging is actually something that gets interpreted as a slightly negative and lukewarm comment. So same thing, look at this one, right? A plus 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 seller. So I guess you already know where I'm going. But as you can see, minus 2.93%. Why? Why people look at that and they say, well, oh, come on, just this is so cliche, so boring, right? So people look at this comment, they say, this is spam. Just someone tries to inflate the profile of the seller, and they are saying A plus 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 seller. So what's the lesson of that? People interpret things differently according to the context. So trying to take a general solution, for example, sentiment analysis, forgetting what is the context in which you analyze this data can actually affect significantly the accuracy of the results. So someone analyzes the profile of the seller, and they see only positive comments in there. So they say, your reputation is great. Go on. It's no negative comments. You have all these A plus 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 seller comments. But, well, in reality, all these things affect negatively the reputation of the seller. So don't accept general solutions. Study the environment and try to adapt the data solutions to the environment. So going to the next step, we said, OK, that's a nice idea, right? So we have text. We have some economic variable that we are trying to predict. So we said, OK, now let's examine how the text of product reviews affect product sales. So we took quite a few digital cameras and other electronics, and we have been monitoring how their sales are evolving over time, and we tried to find correlations with the text of the reviews. So, best camera. What's the result? Well, interestingly enough, negative. Why is that? People that tend to write this is the best camera around and things like that, they tend not to provide any interesting information to the seller, to the other people. So they are perceived as fanboys of this particular brand. They are not being seen as objective, and quite often they are actually being perceived as not being truthful. So this best camera, typically, if you look at the reviews, they tend to be void of other content that people appreciate. So, for example, what is your personal experience with this camera? How did you feel? How does it feel? Is it easy to use, and so on? So when someone just saying this is the best camera in the market, people don't trust that. So now, interestingly enough, look at this comment, which is actually negative. So for the Canon camera, someone wrote a review, and they said, well, video problems with some HD HC cards, especially Kingston. You might miss some good shots unless you use SanDisk Extreme, blah, blah. So this is actually a negative review. 3-star review is way below average for Amazon. But what we have observed is actually that this review actually has a positive effect. So negative reviews, that they are specific and provide information about the product, actually tend to serve as risk mitigators. So people read that and they say, OK, that's the worst that can happen. The video doesn't work with some specific cards. You know what? I'm going to buy it. If this is the worst comment that you can come up with for this camera, it seems a very good deal for me. And this thing happens in a variety of products. We have seen it in hotels, we have seen it in electronics, we have seen it in DVDs, we have seen it in video games, and so on. So if the negative reviews are informative, there is good chance that this reviews are actually contributing to an increase in sales. So understanding what we are trying to measure. So again, just measuring sentiment or measuring what are the reviews on Amazon doesn't really matter. What matters is what effect they have on sales. Another exercise that we did was let's try to figure out what are the things that people care about, right? We have seen that people don't care too much about the video of the camera, the video feature. So what do they care about? So the traditional solution that was out there, many solutions were taking the reviews, they were analyzing, and they were saying, OK, so 50% of the people are talking about lenses for point-and-shoot cameras. Then the second most important thing that people discuss is zoom. And then they talk about megapixels and so on. Well, interestingly enough, we said, OK, let's try to measure what is the effect, how much attention people pay to these products when they're actually buying the product. So yes, people pay attention to the quality of the lenses when they are buying a camera, but for zoom, the effect of sales is significantly lower compared to the level of discussion that's going on. People like to talk about zoom. They talk, oh, my camera has 5 times zoom. Mine is 10 times. Mine is 20, and so on, who has it bigger. So, but they never buy a camera based on the zoom capabilities. So it's not a design feature that actually affects sales. So the incorrect decision, actually, that this brand was leading to was the fact that we should pay more attention to the zoom capabilities of our cameras. In reality, it doesn't matter. Yes, people will talk and talk and talk about zoom. They will not buy based on zoom. So it's an easy discussion point, I guess, because it's something that it's easy to measure and people can talk about it. But there are other characteristics that are much more important. So for example, battery life tends not to get much attention, but it's actually more important for people that buy a point-and-shoot camera. So this was a good lesson, actually. When you are analyzing data, don't pay attention to what people say. Pay attention to what people do. And actually, this is a lesson that we have learned throughout. So what people say compared to what people do is very, very different. So getting behavioral data and examining decisions is actually much more informative compared to the case of just analyzing data that are easily available. So, and let me get to the third and the last part of my presentation. So we're analyzing the effect of reviews on hotel bookings. So here's actually a review from TripAdvisor for a hotel. Now, the hotel I would recommend to anyone who go there for a holiday or vacation, no matter is there a family or couple. He was in a 5-star hotel. We was in a 5-star hotel before, but we didn't spend our holiday that good like here. The managers, the employers, the women who are cleaning the rooms, everyone was kind and hospitality to every guest. So this is a 5-star review. Person is, well, maybe enthusiastic. There are a lot of keywords that are very, very strong, like excellent, I would recommend to anyone, and so on. The grammar of this thing is actually pretty bad. So what we have seen is that grammar actually is pretty important. Reviews that have spelling errors and they are not grammatical, they tend to decrease sales. And similarly, negative reviews that are well written and they contain information, as I already mentioned before, they can actually improve sales. So we looked at that and we're saying, OK, we talked with the company that had this booking. They look at that and say, that's interesting, but we don't know what to do with that, right? I mean, if I'm a hotel and someone is writing a good review that doesn't have good grammar, what I'm supposed to do with that? I mean, so it was kind of this information that bad weather in vacation hotels, hurt sales. Yes, I mean, we know that, but we cannot do anything. We stayed with that impression for a while until last spring. I was in a conference, I was talking with some guys, and they tell me, oh, you are going to love this thing. I know that you're working a lot with Amazon Mechanical Turk. Do you know what Zappos did? They actually took all the 5 million reviews that they had on their website. They put them through Amazon Mechanical Turk. They had humans look at them and fix the spelling and grammar for all the reviews that were on their website. Actually, I look at that and say, well, that's ingenious, actually. So just the whole idea that you can take something that was not actionable before, bad grammar hurt sales, and do something about it, that was pretty interesting. So I don't have confirmation about that, but since they have been running these tasks on Mechanical Turk for quite a while, and they spent quite, hundreds of thousands of dollars on Mechanical Turk, paying people to fix the reviews, I would say that actually should have had an effect on the bottom line, and this is what I have heard through the grapevine. Now, I wrote about that on my blog, and the reactions were actually very mixed. So some of them, they say, oh, that's ingenious. It's a really interesting application of crowdsourcing. But some other people, they say, well, I don't think it is ethical. Okay. And some others said, well, it's rude what Zappos is doing. So one CEO of a company wrote things like, would you correct a friend's tweet or Facebook post? Nitpick a colleague for using a shorthand email sent from his iPhone? Would you do that? This is social intrusion. This is unthinkable. You should not do that. You should not fix the reviews of people. People are going to be offended. I look at that and say, well, yeah, there is a point in that one. So let me look at the data. So I'm trying to find the data from the article. Nothing. So I said, OK, I'm going to do an experiment myself. So I found a willing merchant that actually allowed me to go, and we fixed 1,000 reviews. So we identified things with spelling errors and grammar errors, and said, OK, let's fix these reviews. And then we emailed the authors, and we gave them some gift for incentive to reply. And 978 of them replied. Not a single author was offended. So yes, if the instinct says, oh, people are going to be offended, if you're going to fix whatever they are writing. Most of the people were saying, oh, thank you. Thank you. I leave these comments, and then I'm going back, and I see all these errors, and I feel, I feel like a moron. Thank you for taking care of me. People feel that you're almost going after them, cleaning after what they are throwing down on the floor and so on. Actually, some people, we have done a couple of controls. They said, oh, you have fixed the review, but actually it's not updated online. When are you going to do it? Fix it. I don't want this review with all these grammatical errors and spelling errors to still be there. Actually, that was the point where don't make decisions without actually measuring. And there is this instinct that, oh, I know the industry, and I know my customers, and I'm going to speak on behalf of them. But if you don't measure, you are going to have a problem. Then we said, OK, next thing, we don't really care about what the authors feel. Yes, they might want the reviews to be fixed. We care about not deceiving the people who read these reviews, because what they're saying is, well, let me read the original language of the review. I want to judge whether this person is competent, whether they know how to write, and so on. So I have done a couple of experiments, different versions. So in the version 1, we asked people how do they feel about that, and we replaced the old review with the new one. Actually, I have to say, this is research that was done. We got the results last week, so it's still ongoing. It's not published anywhere, so you are the first to read about these things. So In the first version, when we only posted the fixed version, essentially this is what Zappos has been doing, people were not very happy. Indeed, they were sticking to their guns, and they were saying, well, I want to know the original spelling of the review. However, in the third review, when we put a disclaimer, this review has been edited for grammar and spelling only without changing any of the actual content, nobody complained. Actually, one of the comments that I got back was, can you do the same for YouTube? You know, my eyes hurt every time that I look at these comments. You know, just fix them and let me afterwards, you know, figure out what the guys were writing. And the lesson that we got from that was just don't make decisions without experiments first. You know, measure things, then talk and take decisions. Actually, you will see that there is a slight inconsistency with my prior lesson here. We are not done with this research. We want to see what actually people do in reality. Don't ask them what they think about these reviews. We want to see whether it affects sales. So I say this ongoing experiment, we're going to finish it in the next couple of months. But the lesson is actually clear. So if you don't measure, and you go with your gut instinct, sometimes you're going to be correct, and you're going to believe that you're great, but such decisions need to be backed up by actual experiments and actual data. So overall, 3 lessons. Measure in context. Don't take generic solutions and apply them blindly to everything. You know, every context that people make decisions is different. Measure what people do, not what they say. It's very different. And at the end of the day, measure. Do experiments. That's it. Thank you very much.
A+++ presentation. Would watch again.
Great.
Sorry, that was too easy. So as I'm watching this, my hacker brain is like, there's a great make work project out there. I'm going to go get a Mechanical Turk account, start writing really bad reviews, and then have an autocorrector that corrects them and charge 10 cents each time. And it's amazing that these guys were willing to share this much data with you.
Which guys?
Well, all the people you pulled it from and the merchants that let you do these surveys.
They don't let me put their name, actually. So they
right, but how do you approach someone like that? I mean, how do you start that conversation? Because it sounds like there's a lot of disclosure, and they're getting some benefit from it, but it's still pretty close to their data. Do they anonymize it or put checks and balances in there somehow?
The merchant, the travel agency, yes, they don't let us disclose the exact details. For Amazon, actually, it was public data. You can monitor the Amazon marketplace.
Sure.
We have some tricks for that, and you can see what is being sold and what is not. Other merchants, they just read our research and they say, well, that's interesting. We are not going to do it ourselves, so come and play.
That's awesome. It makes you wonder if Facebook would get more attention if it had Facebook like spelling correction. Have you ever measured things like engagement or time on page or number of responses based on how well written something is?
Ongoing.
Yeah?
Ongoing.
Cool. One of the things I like about the content we've seen so far is it's very counterintuitive. You know, you're hearing that the more you use big data, the more you erode an expectation of privacy, even though you're building aggregate knowledge from more private information, or that spell correcting negative reviews actually leads to positive sales. I never would have guessed that in a million years. So interesting to see these counterintuitive sort of outcomes from this. Any other questions from the floor? Yes.
Yes.
And if they do it, do they react to it as though it were good grammar or bad grammar?
First part of the question. So the question was, what happens? I mean, do we tell people that they can mouse over to see the old review with the bad grammar? Yes, we're telling them that. They were doing it. That's what I said, that my third lesson is incomplete and it's ongoing. We don't know what they're going to do. We have seen evidence that if you have things that are well written, it actually improves the conversion rate, and if the original one was, it's in between, so when you fix it, because people read the original one and they judge the content first, then they mouse over and they get an idea of what this person is writing. One thing that we are currently exploring is the idea that if the person is not a native English speaker, are you going to let them, to forgive them easier? I think this is going to explain a lot, actually. So.
But showing which ones mouse over, to that gentleman's point, showing which ones are moused over, those are probably the ones that the reader found most engaging and wanted to sort of vet by mousing over to see how, hey, that was a really useful review. I mouse over to see how accurately it's represented by its previous version. So there's maybe a good signal there about where they're
we put the
consulting.
disclaimer, right? This review has been edited for grammar and spelling, right, which is the typical thing that most newspapers do with letters from the readers. And I think natural people want to see if something has been edited, they want to see what were the edits. So they were mousing over most of the time.
Any other questions? One more in the back. Can we have the house lights up a bit so we can see people?
Say that again, I don't think that.
Do you think there's any value in automatic sentiment analysis, or is it more often than not misleading?
The question is on whether there is value in automatic sentiment analysis. My answer is yes, there is. So as long as you correlate it properly with whatever you are really care about. And honestly, I would say that I would like more fine-grained sentiment analysis, not just positive, negative, but let this sentiment analysis to be more fine-grained by product feature and be more continuous rather than binary. But I don't doubt the value of sentiment analysis.
And we're actually going to have Jennifer Zezet, who is the founder of Scout Labs, come up here and talk later on. And so maybe we get the two of them to talk about sentiment versus context.